Hello, everybody. Welcome to Blue Collar Gospel Hour. I'm here in Not a Duck in Any Row Studios with my friend Ben. How you doing, Ben?
Good.
Is it okay to say your last name?
Yeah.
It's Ben Hinsey. Did I say it right?
Yeah.
So I've known Ben. Some people call him Big Ben. I don't know, 4 or 5 years, maybe 3 years, 4 years.
Probably 3.
Okay. You worked at another.
Yeah, I worked at another plant. I don't know.
Ben and I both work in the same UAW factory.
Yeah. So it was a different plant for the same company, and it was just across town. It's like a half an hour away.
Yeah. You worked in other union places before that too, didn't you?
Just one. I worked at UPS with the Teamsters.
I was a Teamster for a while, back in the day. I think I belong to 4 unions now. But they are all supposed to have general principles the same, but maybe that's a little later in the conversation.
Yeah.
So how's 2020 been for you, Ben?
I mean, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just the situation in general kind of sucks.
Yeah. Any like major like changes to your life or?
No, not really.
No?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I live in the same place, doing the same thing, working in the same place. So no.
Do you travel any?
No, and now I definitely don't.
Yeah.
So,
That's the one thing. That's like that and like I don't do live poetry readings anymore, obviously.
right.
So those have been shut down for a long time now.
Yeah, I guess that's the biggest change. Is like I used to hang out with people a lot more, and that really sucks.
Yeah, that's been. So when I first built this, I was kind of nervous about. So I've got like a shower curtain on standby to like put dividers up, and just so everybody knows, it's been like 1 or 2 small guests at a time, not small guests, but you know what I mean. Small parties at a time, and trying to make sure, hey, you've been safe. I've been,
right.
just to kind of be cautious, but
Yeah, we work at the same place, so that's the way I thought. It's just like and people, even though we work like different parts of the place, people were walking around, bosses, higher up union officials. So like, if it's gonna spread pretty quick.
If we weren't safe, it would.
You're right. That's what I'm saying is like if it's an issue, it's already
been one. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Like that's
That's one of the things I've been nervous about is with flu season starting, and it's going to be a little wild, I think. Has the potential to be.
Oh, yeah. Definitely with, like, our little checklist that you have to do before the symptoms overlap so much that, like...
They do.
The absenteeism is going to...
For example, my wife had bronchitis like a month and a half ago, and I was convinced for about 48 hours that she had COVID. I mean, it was high temperature, a lot of coughing, and we both got tested and stayed home, and then it came back negative, and she went to the doctor finally, and it was bronchitis.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was kind of a weird week.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's one of my concerns kind of moving forward in the next several weeks, I guess. So, but yeah, it's been an interesting year.
Yeah.
So, have you, I I know you're a pretty in tune guy with like a lot of the things going on in the world all the time. Like you seem like you stay up to date quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean the world's a giant scope. I'm not gonna.
Well, you know, I mean, you know what I mean. Within reason.
Yeah.
You know,
I try.
Pay attention to the news, I guess, and the headlines, and the,
but,
you know.
Yeah.
That have you watched more news? I found myself watching more news this year than I used to.
I watch less like mainstream news and a lot more like there's a lot. I'm about to say I watch more podcasts. I mean, I do watch a podcast like on YouTube. It is a podcast, but they also are on YouTube. But
And you're welcome to shout them out too.
Just like the Majority Report with Sam Cedar. There's like a daily, just kind of news.
I watch some of the Young Turk stuff.
Yeah,
you know,
he's like a former stand-up, and so there's a lot more humor to it. So it's this, working 10 hours at a factory. I just listen to stuff.
Yeah,
more content, more content all the time. So, but there's a lot more podcasts because like I just got burnt out on the mainstream like cable stuff. It just feels like it'll rot your brain if you just watch it too much.
Yes, it's well, ironically enough, talking about podcasting and watching and listening to podcasts, that is one of like the fastest growing like genres of like entertainment right now because of the internet, and probably everybody's stuck at home. So much so, in fact, that when I bought this equipment, like some of it was on back order for a while because so many people were buying stuff like this, and I think that's kind of one of the neat things about the internet is it's kind of, I don't want to say replace mainstream, but it's like allowed normal people to kind of like have a niche in the market,
Yeah, it's definitely lowered the barrier.
Yes.
I mean, I guess, yeah, for better and worse.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it comes with.
One of the podcasts I listen to a lot is QAnon Anonymous, and it's like I don't know if you ever heard of QAnon.
Oh yeah, I sure have.
Yeah, it's like a critical podcast. So
you're not saying that you're like
following
the dictation of a mysterious
ghost
writer from the Pentagon?
No, I listen to a podcast where we laugh.
Okay.
They laugh at them, and we
just to clarify.
I laugh as the audience. We laugh at them, yeah. But also in horror because it just keeps
absolutely
growing.
Yeah,
it just
for
keeps
sure.
Growing. At first it was like, ha ha, these people were funny, and then now it's like, ha ha ha, they got nominations in the Republican Party. They're winning them, and that one lady in Georgia is going to win.
Yeah.
The Democrat even dropped out because I guess like personal family issues, I guess, but.
So you pay attention.
Yeah, well, that's just a weird niche thing.
It is. I don't think it is a niche anymore because, like, QAnon's being reported on mainstream news now.
Finally.
Yeah, finally. It's got millions of followers, man.
It's almost too late. It's almost like the fact that they're reporting on it now is like only when it gets big feeds into their narrative of like, oh, they're on. We got the power now, and it's just like no, it's like people, you kill a mob boss, and then you win primaries. People are going to start talking about you, even if you're not. You're not on the path of the light.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's not about trying to silence the truth. You're just you're out there, and people want to look. They're a little worried about you.
That's been one of the biggest realizations I think in the last couple of years. Is excuse me. So that's the results of being a 25-year smoker. But yeah, one of the biggest realizations is that not only can we not debate and argue and like those things like that with a lot of people, like we're not even living in the same reality sometimes. I mean, the facts are so I don't even know how to say it, non-existent in a lot of realities.
Yeah, or at least contested.
Correct.
Yeah, right. Like, but some just not existent. Just like they just a whole new. Again, I would say, not to be like all both sides. But there's a positive about. There's a negative if everyone's on the same track. Like, you hear people like, oh, back in the day, everyone watched the nightly news, and like, there's this thing of like, oh, people were better informed and discussion was better. But it's like, what about everything that got left on the cutting room floor? Right? There's a lot of truth that didn't get told to you.
Yes.
So that's part of the issue too. It's like, that's the positive side, I guess, of like there being, that's why I get concerned where people are like, oh, everyone's just in their own reality, and it's like, well, because not everyone has all the facts at once, so there's gonna be. It's not all negative. It's part of it is because people are finding out new things, and then like, I just worry about people being clamping down and just being like, well, if like the QAnon people, and then the people on Facebook who get upset about those fact checkers and the stuff. I mean, most of the stuff they get upset about is crazy, but it is weird that it's like, well, yeah, Facebook anoints these fact checkers, and they're the fact checkers, and
yes,
how do you, I mean, like, how do you?
It's a scary path,
right? And it's definitely scary when you're like, oh, what if they actually do have like a bias that becomes very apparent? You're just going to be, labeled one of these crazies.
Yes.
Right? Like, so there's a lot
of sensitivity.
Right.
In the world.
Like
yeah.
there's like a germ of truth in what they're saying, but they just built, they're building, they got a little tiny platform of truth, and they're building skyscrapers of like insanity on it. That's the problem. So like their foundation is like, there's a little tiny, but they're like building to the moon. I
got a friend at work, and we talk about conspiracy theories a lot because they're fun.
Oh no, yeah.
And we were talking today, like the best conspiracy theories start out with like some truth, or they have some kind of fact or something. There's something in there,
right,
that makes it, okay, maybe,
right.
And that's like, but there are other conspiracy theories out there. Then you're like, yeah, I'm not even going to like entertain that,
No, right.
And I think that's kind of
right.
Anyway, not to stray too far, but yeah, that. So I was a journalism major in college many years ago, and I dropped out, flunked out of college, whatever. But I've always, it's easy for me to bash like Fox News, right, because they don't hold the same values in life I do. But it's harder to see some of the same things that Fox News does on my side of the fence because it's too close to home. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I feel like that's what I'm afraid of. I'm always afraid, like not that I'm always afraid, but I'm always mindful of, am I living in like reality? You know what I mean? Am I getting too much smoke blowing up my ass, and I'm believing and it's hard to like be confident of that all the time. Sometimes it seems like.
Oh no, yeah, there's so much more information now, but you still all this processing it through like secondary sources, which you know what I mean. Like you're hearing about things all around the world, but it's still coming through these. It's not like we're all interconnected. We can be, but it's not like you're hearing about, for example, like politics in India from like people in India. You're hearing about it from some guy who talked to the, you know what I mean? Like there's still, so there's like, even though we have more information now than ever, you still got to be worried that like, yeah, it just all washes out, becomes static. You don't really know because it's all just kind of it gets filtered and adulterated so many times, and I don't even mean maliciously. Just like
No, yeah.
You play a game of telephone with the best intentions, you're still gonna lose a lot of
Yes.
of fidelity in what the truth is.
And there's a lot of studies out there that have proven time and time again that you and I can stand on the same street corner and watch the same event happen, and at some level, when we repeat that an hour later, that there will be details that are different. And neither one of us are lying. Neither one of we're both convinced that you know what I'm saying?
Oh no.
And studies repeatedly, time after time and after time, have proved that. You know.
I experienced that. Whoa. I leaned back on a chair and so I was in Toledo. We the first I don't know if it's officially Black Lives Matter, but it was like essentially that. There's a group. I want to say. No, I'm fine.
We could trade chairs, man.
No, okay. I'm fine. I'll just sit up. I want to say CSRN, Community.
Oh yeah, Community Response Network. Yeah.
Or like, I think it's not. Solidarity is in there somewhere. I think it's
Community Response Solidarity Network. I think it's CRSN.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah, I should have. Anyways, I know those people in, and now I feel really bad for not.
That's okay.
Knowing what the acronym is. I think there's I don't know what their exact association with Black Lives Matter is. But anyways, it was about the George Floyd murder.
Mm-hmm.
So I was there, and then basically the riot police came out, and I guess my point is, I ended up getting shot in the thigh by a rubber bullet, but like, then I went and talked to a lawyer, and I tried my best to tell him what happened, and then somebody sent me a video later, and I was like, whoa. My perception of time at the time was just way off. Yeah. But of course it's going to be because like it was it was super high tense. Like,
yeah.
At one point there's like guys in like camouflage fatigues with like
machine guns.
Yeah.
I've been involved with
Yeah, it was really weird, and they were marching down the street in like actual formation. It wasn't like even the thing where they stand far away on the sidelines in case something really weird happens. So this is like, no, they were making a push on us, and it was like very.
They're trained by the military. I mean, they're trained with military tactics, and.
Yeah. And also, it was, I don't know. We can get into that whole day. That was.
I got all evening, brother.
That whole day, the police there were just amazingly awful. Never once did I hear a loudspeaker, like communication. Like, they were ready to shoot rubber bullets, but they didn't. No one had a megaphone.
Yeah.
And since then, I've bought a megaphone, and they're affordable. Like, I didn't. It's not. There should just. Maybe there should be one in the riot van.
Yeah.
Or the APC that said, bought with Homeland Security funds, right on it. It's fun.
Yeah, that. Yeah, I knew several people that were there that day.
Right.
And I drove by like around, and I thought about going multiple times, and one of the things about getting a little older is I've learned a lot about who I am, and I know I'm not always the most level-headed human being in those environments. Yeah. And I've been tear gassed before, so like, and I know that's a fucking horrible thing to experience, And it's like, I've been able to go to some other protests, and things like that, and I don't know. Matter of fact, I was just talking to people. My 9-year-old daughter has asked to go to one, and so I got to find one hopefully in the next week. Yeah. One evening after work to take her to. It's important. It's important to me that as my kids inquire about these things, that I take them and kind of like, I don't know, introduce them to that life, Yeah. So
honestly, it was like my first experience going to one, and it was kind of saying. I mean, I've been like in like, there was like some, I think early on in the Trump administration, there was like a unity march, but that wasn't like this. You know what I mean? That was just like we all just walked down the street and then to the Anglican. No, it's Episcopalian because we're in America. That's right. Church, and they were nice and they just hosted a thing.
Yeah.
I helped some unions pass out buttons and pins.
Yeah. So you've been involved with some activism.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's very on the fringes. I'm trying to get more into it, but.
Hey, by the way, there's water over there and paper and pen if you need anything.
Okay.
So you know.
Okay.
So let me ask you this, Ben. So this is like your first major kind of event like that. What led you this time to like say, you know what, I'm going to join up? Like what?
Well, politically I've become more I guess I'm going to say radicalized, but that sounds really like scary.
It's like a trite word anymore, yeah.
Right. But like at the same time, like just in general, like the way I was just the way Bernie had to drop out or like send a bunch of people to possibly get sick and die at the polls.
Yes.
That didn't feel like it was real fair. So I was upset about that.
That's back-to-back elections. It hasn't seemed fair.
Right. Yeah, definitely. It wasn't just that too. That Iowa caucus was like weird.
Yeah,
weird. You want to get into conspiracy theories?
Have you ever attended a caucus? By the way,
no.
I have. It's a fucking bizarre way to do elections, man. Like we got to do better. Anyway, I'm sorry, Ben.
Oh no. Yeah, I mean, historically, maybe it made sense, but like now, it's like no, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's insane.
Right. And there's other way, like you can do instant alternative vote or whatever, instant runoff. Because that's the one thing that's nice about caucus is like you can go out there and voice your support for a quote unquote fringe candidate or someone who's not as well known, and if they don't catch on with everybody, your vote isn't completely gone. You know what I mean? Like you
can change, yeah.
Yeah, you're not just shouting into the void.
It feels to me kind of like how you would do like a third grade class president election or some shit, though.
Oh no, right.
Like you line up in the high school gym and you all, okay, Bobby's corner's over here and Susie's corner's, and it's about the same result. You'd have a bunch of 9-year-olds running around or a bunch of 25-year-old or 45-year-olds in Iowa trying to figure out if they're in the right group,
Yeah, I think it made a lot more. I mean, I don't know the full history of it, but like it probably made more sense when like everyone was out there was living in sod homes and like everyone had to get into town one. You know what I mean? Like it made more sense that way, And I could definitely like back then it was probably nice to be like. It probably made things a little bit harder to rig back then because like you're not coming in voting and then like riding 5 days back to your house. You know what I mean? Like so it was like we all got the count. Okay, cool. We all can go home now. But nowadays it's the exact opposite where like it's so chaotic that it's a problem. Like now when you can designate a poll watcher and like call them, like it doesn't make any sense. But
yeah, speaking of elections. Why would anybody that claims to love freedom in America and democracy, and which I know it's not democracy, it's a republic, whatever, but flag waving Americans and all this freedom and all this stuff, why would anybody like that want to stop anybody else from voting? That's one of the things that I read about a lot, and I try not to get too deep into like the paranoia. But there's some batshit crazy stuff that goes on sometimes with closing polls and like Wisconsin, when they did their primary, like I've got some like poet friends in Wisconsin and I made some like friends with like people in like UAW people in like Milwaukee and stuff. And like watching the pictures, there was like people waiting in line for 8 hours to vote in Milwaukee during a pandemic, like because they closed so many different, whatever.
Oh, well, yeah, well, I just want to make one point first. We were talking about why I went out and I got radicalized.
I'm sorry, Ben. You're right.
Yeah.
Thanks for keeping us
Well,
on
I
track.
just want to be clear. What happened to George Floyd was a grave injustice, and that's also why. It wasn't just because I was sad about Bernie Sanders.
Yes,
because
let's
that
get back
sounds
to
really
that.
bad. That sounds really.
You're right. Let's get back to that.
No. We can talk about that. I just want to put it on the record. It wasn't like, oh, Bernie got shafted again. I'm just going to join anything that's mad, and I don't really care about the. I think those things, a lot of those things intertwine to me. That's what I'm trying to say, and that's how I got more into things like Black Lives Matter and such. But to get back to what you just brought up, because I think that's a very interesting subject. Well, some people they're just lying through their teeth when they're being disingenuous when they're like, oh, I'm a patriotic American, rah rah, just everyone vote. They're just lying because to be frank, politics is about power. And so if you know certain people, even not everyone that's like that, but like the majority of them aren't going to vote your way, obviously it makes sense on a pure just like power basis to be like, no, cut them off.
Yeah.
Right? That's it. But no, people don't want to talk like that. We have to act like that's something we as a country when talking about politics need to get better about is like being able to distinguish between good faith actors and bad faith actors, and not even just actors, just like points, because there's a lot of like right like and when they get brought up, like something like voter ID. Like, sounds good on paper until you realize, oh, this is to add another hoop. This isn't really.
Yes.
And like, I personally wouldn't even be that upset about voter ID if, you say, well, we're gonna write the law, and then it will be maybe 2 election cycles from now, and there's a big education push.
Everybody gets access to an ID.
Right. There's a bunch of offices. Like, you can go down to your post office and get a voter ID somehow. You know what I mean? If you actually made the infrastructure where it's very accessible and it isn't a hoop. But most of the people pushing voter ID, it isn't really about
securing elections.
Right. It's about jumping through hoops. Because the elections are pretty secure in that sense already. But, like, I'm not opposed to making them more secure. No. Even if it's like, because it just adds more. It's good, I guess, to just make most people. If you're willing to spend the resources on making it easy to get a voter ID, it makes more people confident in the results of the election, which is good, right? Mm-hmm. Because like.
That's important.
Right, because there are people who are saying these things in bad faith. There's plenty of people who are hearing it and they think, well, no, that's a good faith argument, and so now I'm gonna always be worried about that. Mm-hmm. You see that with like, I mean, part of it is like people just don't know how like the actual nuts and bolts work too. Mm-hmm. With that is like you have the election board is run on the county level, at least in Lucas County. Like, from what I know, you have to have Democrats and Republicans on it. Mm-hmm. You can go. There's a way to go sign up and watch. So it's really hard to like actually, but they just like. Well, Democrat-run city, so obviously they're stuff in the ballot box. Like it's,
But I feel like people say that shit, but then for the most part, the general public has a pretty reasonable amount of confidence that this is a valid election. Obviously.
Right.
But I feel like we're also kind of veering into a territory where that confidence is shaken.
Right.
At some levels, which historically is very bad.
Yeah.
That's, I mean...
Well, I mean, and it also gets really complicated because at some level, you should not, like, when you have the turnout numbers we have. I mean, yeah. The elections are kind of bullshit, but not in the sense that like people are faking votes. It's just like you're not. And
only 38% of Americans decide. Right. Yeah,
I've said this at the union. We'll have like in our union. There's a big like vote about shift preference, how we structure our shifts, and every time it's like we get into this discussion, we have a vote of the people at the union hall. Now. That is the most ridiculous thing in the world because you didn't announce we're going to have a vote beforehand.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, when we vote on everything else, there's a giant window for people to vote.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I get it. Like, it makes a point in the room to be like, hey, everyone here does. But especially on shift preference, I find it really annoying because, like, basically there's this argument between, like, a traditional like 8-hour shift with 3 shifts, and then like we have this weird 40, 50, 60 program. Basically, there's 10 hours. You got to work 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
So 10 and a half because it's unpaid lunch. So a lot of the people who might want 8-hour shifts because they don't have enough time in their day probably are also the Venn diagram overlap with people who can't make it to a union meeting. So like, it's like
Correct.
Okay, and but like to be fair, I support the 8-hour thing, but the Facebook polls, my side gets crushed. But again, not everyone's on Facebook. It's another thing,
and it's not everybody understands both sides of the issue either.
Right.
Which leads me to something that I thought about for a long time, that our union is often a microcosm of society and larger, where 3% of the people are engaged or 10% or whatever low, and everybody else is just trying to survive and whatever,
Right.
And that's kind of like how society is.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just, so I guess there's this part of it is this, there's a general, back to like our political elections. I do think there's, even if people don't even like think about it in a conscious way, there's just this sense that like, yeah, there's bullshit. So like when somebody tells you like, oh, there's stuff in the ballot box, it's like, yeah, probably. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like for a very low information voter or citizen, I should say, because maybe they're not voting because they think it's all bullshit.
Mm-hmm. Or they're protesting.
Right. They're just like, yeah, and they're more open to, so like addressing some of that might solve the issue, but like the powers that be don't really like expanding the electorate means expanding our politics to issues that we haven't talked about, and that what are those issues?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, as a left person, a lot of like economic justice, I guess, and the people who in power aren't going to be.
That's a good topic, though. One of my favorites of all time.
Right.
Well, probably because I grew up in the projects and abject poverty, you know, and I work at a job where I'm now a middle class citizen of America, which is a better place to be.
Right.
So.
Well, yeah. The reason I say well is like, the term middle class when we talk about it in America is so like.
It's kind of like the American dream. It's not really clearly defined.
Yeah, no, and what people think what middle class is like, historically, most of the people who say they're middle class, like if you take like historically, as in like all the way back to Rome, you're not middle class in the sense that like you're not this, you're not a knight under a king. Like,
I'm not respected in the government. I don't,
right? Like it's not. I would say you're most
working class.
Right.
Yes.
Right. I don't know.
Which has kind of become like interminglable as terms. Like I didn't say that fucking word right either.
Yeah.
Excuse my language, Ben. Anyway, If you've been listening to the podcast, you're going to hear some fucking F-bombs.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's like working class and middle class. Like, I use them interchangeably. There you go. I can say that word.
Right.
But they're not really interchangeable words.
No, definitely. Since there's a lot of people, like you go to like surveys, you'll see like people saying what basically the upper middle class in this country. They're rich people.
Yeah.
To most people, they would be rich people.
Yes.
Now, I think on some level they still have things in common with the lower middle class, but not as much as you think. They're
It's a different life. It is.
Right.
Like, it's...
Right. Also, just general interests. Like, I don't know. It gets into, like... But part of that's changing because, like... because most of those people would be like... this is probably more, like, leftist Twitter talk of, like, PMC. Professional Managerial Class.
Mm-hmm.
And people have used that too long and made it into... everyone they don't like is a PMC. But basically, just meaning, like... You know, the upper middle class historically, and this time I'm just talking like maybe the last, let's say, 100, 150 years, is like they got college degrees. They're like professors, upper management, even lower management, depending on where you work. I mean, like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying a McDonald's manager. I'm not trying to shit on McDonald's managers, but I'm also not like trying to act like they're at this extreme, but like, you know, where we work, I would put them in there because they make good money.
Yeah.
They're also their interests and goals are much more aligned with, you know, upper management than like, let's say, a McDonald's floor manager.
Yes.
Right. But like, but that is slowly, and that used to guarantee you a very nice standard of living. That's quickly eroding. Between, even if it provides a good standard of living, college debt is just like eating into that. But also, you see a lack of decent paying, low skill, I'm putting that in quotes, you know, not, you know, good jobs without, you don't need a college degree for, are disappearing quick. So a lot of those people are rushing to college.
It's harder.
So it's a supply and demand thing. So like suddenly you're not that valuable. Your college degree is becoming less and less valuable because there's not enough jobs for people who don't have college degrees. So everyone's trying to get a college degree. And so slowly some of those people that we would think are like upper middle class are slowly coming down to like just normal middle class, lower middle class, working class. But
the wage divide's growing. Right.
And on the left, I see there's a lot of conflict there because they go to college, there's just like this, some of it literally centuries old, this culture of like, just this affectations, how you know, just like things, you know, and a lot of those people are smart and they're realizing, a lot of my economic interests, my societal interests are actually with the working class, but they come down and but they still carry a lot of that like upper middle class like culture of like that PMC culture, and there's a culture clash there in the left. I mean, I'm going off on like weird left Twitter stuff. That's the online left. That is all left.
I feel like there's a clash between traditional capitalists and millennial socialists,
right?
or at least.
Oh no, that's the bigger clash.
But I don't. I shouldn't say millennial socialist, just like more progressive, you know, because it's not really socialism. It's not, you know, it's just,
right.
You know,
it's more social democracy.
Yes.
social democrat.
Yeah.
Which
isn't far from where I probably stand. I'm probably somewhere between there and a full-on Marxist, somewhere in between.
Well, this is where it gets really weird and squishy and complicated. Because, like, the original social democrats were Marxists. The way I look at it, social democrat is like a box, but it's like let's say it's a section in the road on the path.
Okay.
And you can be there, but it doesn't tell you which direction you're trying to go, right?
Okay.
So like, you got to be careful, like, definitely, like, in European politics, definitely, like, third world politics. Social democrats sometimes are trying to pull a left-wing society right. They're like, oh, I mean, you still get your free health care and stuff, but, like, we got to privatize the rails so you can't move easy, like in England, right?
Yep.
Or I should say the UK. I have.
Speaking of the UK and the rails, not to throw us off topic, but I have a great biography that I haven't quite finished yet about a guy named Bob Crow. I don't know if you've ever heard of him or not, but was an incredible human being.
It sounds familiar.
He was an admitted socialist. He became like the secretary of the rail union.
Okay.
And he was like real hardcore, like union man. And became like ultra popular in the media because of he was pretty, kind of like what I wish our union was like.
Okay, yeah.
But anyway, a friend of mine like told me about the book, and I checked, I bought it. I had to buy it from the UK, and it's written by this like UK journalist, so it's kind of in a non-American style, which is a little.
But it's about an American guy.
No, it's about a guy from the rail, yeah. He was the president of the RMC in England. Or the secretary.
In England, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
you were talking about the rails in the UK.
No.
Yeah,
For some
England.
reason,
I'm sorry.
No, that makes sense. You say, oh, he was the union leader in the rail. I'm instantly trying to go through my, like, thoughts of, like, there's multiple. I'm trying to, like, break down, like, which American.
No, he was the secretary of the Royal whatever RMC rail in England. Yeah. And became wildly popular because he was like a hardcore.
Yeah.
The people that he represented loved him by and large.
Right. Yeah.
So,
but yeah, but at the same point on the road, you could be going the other way and trying to be pulling society left, or the economic system left. Society is kind of a big word, and that gets, anyways, and so when somebody calls themselves a social democrat, or like a political party does, especially a political party, you gotta look into them a little bit more and see about it. But like, social democrat can definitely in left circles can be a pejorative, because like you're trying to slow us down. You're too soft. But like historically that hasn't always been the case. But I mean, where that really got bad was like the social they might have been the SPD in Germany. They basically killed Rosa Luxemburg, who was like she used to be part of the SPD and then started like the Partisan League. Right at the end of World War I, basically, the whole country was like trash, and they were trying to start a revolution, like, and so a socialist party, in name at least, the Social Democratic Party, hired Free Corps people who were like, just paramilitary weirdos who. Well, be fair, they're not weirdos. They're guys coming back from the front with literally. Some of them literally with no job skills at all. Like they got drafted, they're at the youngest age possible, and just spent some of their most formative years, like trying to kill people. So like that's all.
In a pretty violent form of fighting.
Right, and that's literally all they know what to do. So like they form these weird paramilitary groups to hang out with their old buddies, and like. Anyways, the Free Corps. anyways, they basically hire them or like give them the power to like put down the revolution. So like that's why social democrat can be a very fraught term, because like they were social democrats. So like they that's their tradition versus like a communist party at the time was more radical.
Mm-hmm. To be fair, so I took a some detailed like where do you fall on the political spectrum quiz one time.
Yeah.
You know, it was like 300 questions. I don't
Right.
know. But at the end of it, I came out as a socialist libertarian.
Right.
Which some people are like, what? That doesn't make sense at all. But when I think about it, it absolutely makes sense for who I am.
Well, it's actually
because or as I like to generalize, I want the government to say the fuck out of my personal life, but I want to help everybody that needs help. You know,
right.
Which, you know.
Yeah, no. That's actually the original, like in a political sense, libertarian as a term started on as leftist libertarians. So like it actually was a term that got co-opted from right-wing libertarians.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those things. When the left gets popular, their terms often get co-opted,
stolen.
Yeah, because they're popular. Also, to go back to social democrat, I was really harsh, like, but the main point I guess I was gonna say, I get upset definitely in the American context now of like, oh, you're a social democrat, you're not hard enough. We're all social democrats at this point. No one's none of us are hiding out in the woods with AKs trying to start the revolution. We're nowhere near a general strike. We're all social democrats.
Yes.
You know what I mean? If your big push is like Medicare for all right now, yeah, this is social democratic reform. But it's a very important one.
It is.
And the idea is like you prove that it works and that builds credibility. And then where you go from there, that's when you really get into like inter-left fights. But like until we get there, there's no reason to have inter-left fights.
Is, in my opinion, the biggest challenge being anywhere involved with the left is we outnumber the right by a large percentage.
Well,
overall, we do right now in America.
If you define left from like the center left to everyone left.
How about vote Democrat?
Yes.
We outnumber the people that would vote Republican by a hefty percentage.
Right.
You know, 2 or 3 percentage points is millions of people. You know, but the thing is, we're not good at grouping together. We're not good at solidarity. We're not good at fighting with each other, fighting with each other against. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's one of our challenges is getting So I've got some friends that have become very excited because they think Joe Biden's definitely going to win this election. I've got a very close friend of mine, like a brother to me, who's betting people large amounts of money, and I'm like, I like to egg it on because I like to fight and argue and debate all this stuff. But I keep telling these people, I don't think they understand how the Electoral College works. Oh, and in order for me to be that confident Joe Biden's going to win, I have to be confident he's going to win in Wisconsin, which I'm not, in Michigan, which I'm not, in Ohio, which I don't think he's going to win, in Pennsylvania, where I don't think he's going to win. And those states are, if you win 3 or 4 of those states, you're probably going to win the election.
Oh, yeah.
And Joe Biden's, it's...
Yeah, he's not...
It's a lot closer than these guys think, Oh,
no, it is. But, I was a little skeptical of what you're saying until you showed, the Electoral College. I was like, oh, yeah. The votes-wise, I think he'll probably win the majority of the votes.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Right? But, but yeah, no. And it's not even just about the Electoral College. It's also about, I'm worried about, does this become, 2000 where we go to the Supreme Court and they get to play line judge and... They're totally neutral and not political at all, right, guys? Right? No.
Sometimes, so admittedly, I get lost in some rabbit holes now and again, okay? But sometimes I stay up late at night and I start thinking crazy things, and I think, man, how wild is it to live in the most powerful, quote-unquote, country in the history of this planet? And our entire rule system is ran and governed by 9 people who are old and get to do that job for the rest of their life.
Right.
And they're picked solely based on which filter they interpret the same fucking document from.
Right.
Like, they're reading the same damn document. The one, say, me and you can read it too.
Right.
And it says the same thing to everybody.
Right.
But they're solely picked on how they interpret that document. And we let them decide all of our fate.
And they're not even, in their theory of doctrine, they're not even consistent. They're not even,
Yeah, absolutely.
right. Not. Like, I love the, like, you know, the originalists or like the textualists who are like, you know, very strict about, you know, things like states' rights until it comes to drugs. And then it's like, yeah, of course, no. That's too crazy. I'm like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sure. You know.
But they're all about state rights until they need to pull back some power because it is about, you know.
Right. And it's like, that one's the craziest to me. No, it's not the craziest, but like, that one's just crazy to me because it just, the amount of like lost power there is on its surface very, very low, but it makes more sense to me if you go deeper. Reason you can't let states legalize marijuana, or you can't be not good about that is as one of the fine. This is why I was, and this is part of my point where like not everybody in the Democratic Party is necessarily left. That Kennedy III guy, I forget his first. I think he's Joe Kennedy the first. One of the feral Kennedys that ran against Ed Markey. That one of the Kennedys that roams the countryside of Massachusetts. He said, like, yeah, marijuana's not bad, but like we can't legalize it because then cops can't use it as a pretext to search your cars. And it's like, it was like, no, that's part of the reason we want to legalize it too. But like he's like, no, we can't let the cops, and that's why you can't let, because it's not even at that point even it's not even about the money, because they can make money off it. Mm-hmm. They know it's not that crazy. It's just, you know, it could be, you know, put in the same kind of boxes like alcohol and contained like that.
Do you know how marijuana became illegal in this country?
I remember I used to be really into that. That's one of those things that actually started getting me real upset in politics. There's a lot of racist history about it. And then there's like, I don't know if it's real. This might be more conspiracy theory, but like, literally like Randolph Hearst has a bunch of timber interests, and he's like, well, I can't let people grow hemp because that will undercut my I've invested in this one technology called paper pulp and wood pulp. And if I let this hemp-based paper boom, I lose my money in my timber pulp. How much truth there is that I've heard that, and then I've also heard like counter arguments. Oh, it wasn't that big of a deal. But the racist part about like, you know, these Mexicans come across the border for agricultural work, and they smoke marijuana and they cause crime.
Well,
that is true.
Even more simple than all of that, which all of those things play into that. But after Prohibition, there was a whole government agency that was in charge of Prohibition.
Anslinger. Yeah.
And then, but
I know where you're going.
Yeah.
I'm saying.
So then they were going to lose their jobs,
right?
Because alcohol is legal again. So they're like, hey, let's go arrest these pot smoking hippies, and
right.
You know, I don't know if they probably didn't call them hippies then, but you know.
Yeah. No.
That's what they became. But then it became the things that you're saying.
Well, yeah,
it all plays it. Yeah, but
they're all tied together. They're intertwined. Because like that's definitely a big. I forgot about that. Yeah, it's definitely a big part of why.
By the way, I learned about that originally on a podcast.
That's definitely a big part of why it became illegal on a federal level.
Yes, correct.
Like what I'm talking about was more like California, Arizona. They were like, with the racism was like, well, we got to, basically, we need these people to come over and work the fields, but we want to keep them in control. They got to know that they're not really welcome here. This is temporary. Even though we literally plan on doing this form of, using this form of labor for up until today, it's temporary. They got to know this is temporary. Don't get comfortable. So that's part of the thing is like, well, we can harass them because I don't want to get I mean, again, I don't want to be I haven't, it's been a long time since I read, but the immigrants, the temporary farm workers did smoke marijuana more because it was cheap, because you can literally throw it in the ditch and then it would grow, and then you would, versus having to pay someone to brew alcohol. It was just cheaper for them, and it made more sense for them to use it as a recreational drug. So they did use it more, but like I don't know if they used it more than I assume they didn't use it more than like the white people were using alcohol. Is my point. I'm not trying to be like, oh, they were a bunch of potheads, and what, you know.
Well, so now was just, since we're on this topic briefly, how soon do you think it becomes federally legal?
Basically when it becomes, I mean, I could see it happening next term, and I could see it being another 20 years. It's one of those wild cards. I feel like it's like a draw two in a hand of Uno, or like a skip. It's one of those things that you hold until you really need it, because like I definitely could see the Republican Party being like China goes to Nixon on it and being like, oh, we're about personal liberty, like we're the cool guys now, right?
Yeah.
Suddenly,
and he's mentioned that he's in favor of it.
Right. Definitely, if they can secure some reason that, you know, cops can keep pressure on people, because like that's I think that's the undertone in that, is like it really is like, well, because if people don't understand, if a cop says they smelled marijuana in your car, they're allowed to search it. It's probable cause. How do you prove that guy actually smelled marijuana? I don't know. Like, how do you? I mean, like it's not like they come out with a digital sensor and wave it around your window and say, "Oh, it detects marijuana smell."
It's scientifically, it's like one of the worst, like fact-based ways.
Right.
You know, like scientific evidence has proved time and time again that's a very unreliable.
It's not, and it's also not like something like a skunk smell. It's not like there's strains of marijuana called skunkweed that literally smell like a skunk, an animal that's commonly hit by cars.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes,
like,
correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you could hit a skunk, and then that turns into your traffic stop for not using your turn signal into like, we're gonna rip your car apart.
Yes.
Because we don't like you for some reason. And those some reasons tend to be, you know, racist, you know what I mean? Not
racially motivated.
Right,
yes.
right.
And that's
at least, yeah.
That's I forgot what I was going to say about it, man.
That's fine.
But it's
so what I was saying is like it becomes what, and I could see the left also using it as like one of those things. The left seems very positive about it, and they're very like, yeah, no, because they see it through that lens of like, well, it's being used to like give the state power to mostly harass poor people, right? So when you talk about economic justice, it's like it's mostly used to harass poor people. Rich people don't gotta worry about it too much, because even if they get caught, like you can deal with court fees. You can then you have like that's the whole problem with like our legal system is like, if you got a good lawyer, good lawyers cost money.
They do a lot of money.
Right. And if you have a good lawyer, your experience in our legal system is a lot different than if you just have a public defender. And not to shit on public defenders, they're just overburdened in a lot of cases. And like
they're playing a game in a very broken system.
Right. Like, you know, they're, you know, so yeah. That plus a lot of them are like those potheads and stuff, and like there's also the more social, libertarian, socialist, anarchist view of like, well, freedom, like even if it wasn't just being used as a tool of harassing poor people and people of color. It's just you should be able to do it, which I fall on that. I think both of those are true.
Yes, I in my heart, I'm an anarchist.
Well, yeah.
But I know because I know that that's the only way to have true freedom. But I also know, I guess intellectually, that there's no way you can sustain anarchy in like 400 million Americans or whatever the number is.
Well, that's the debate you have between like that's the original debate of the left. It's like the left starts with like socialists who are like put-down and utopian socialists and then the International Working Men's Association basically boils down to this fight between what's it? I want to say Bukhakin or the main anarchist guy, Bukhakin, and Marx. And Marx basically, they both agree they want to get to this anarchic society.
Mm-hmm.
And Marx is basically saying, but we got to do a bunch of stuff before we get there because we can't just flip the switch now. And the other side's like, well, no, everything you're saying we got to do is like a giant impediment. Basically, you're saying we got to build up state power so that we can finally get to anarchy. That makes no sense. But also, flipping switch tomorrow also doesn't make much sense to me. So there's like, I kind of fall into like a synthesis of the two of like, obviously I don't think like tomorrow if I think we just kind of fall into the same patterns. If we just flip the switch tomorrow, we just fall into the same patterns that we just do now. So you gotta get people like actually thinking about stuff and like part of the problem is too is like if you just flip switch now, the rich people still mostly have
more
control.
resources.
Yes, right. I mean, they do and don't because like if you flip the switch tomorrow, we could take the factory away from FCA, but at the same time, the guy that basically owns it, Elkan, he's probably sitting in some compound with like machine guns with stacks of like. He could, if he knew the flip was going to be switched, he could buy a bunch of medicine and like, you know what I mean? Like, it's right. So you still have to, he still would have a lot of control tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Not the same amount, but it becomes exponential where
he'd be a lot more insecure.
Right. Yeah, he would, but it also like, even if it was just himself, I mean, that man could literally buy a tank for himself, which would give you a lot more power in this chaotic situation of anarchy at a light switch.
One of the things I've done recently is I've been reading a lot more about the auto light strike in Toledo, and one of the things I learned recently, because I mean I've read about it lots of times, but then you go back and revisit it and you like dig deeper. The guy that owned the factory hired armed security guards to stand shoulder to shoulder around his home because he was that terrified that the strikers were going to like ransack his home and like burn his house down and like harm his family.
I mean,
that was just wild to me that shoulder to shoulder. Like, I don't know how big his property was, but think about how many guards that would employ,
Yeah.
So, by the way, the auto light strike is like one of the top 3 most influential strikes in American labor history.
Right.
It happened right here in Toledo, just less than 5 miles from here, 3 miles from here maybe. So.
Yeah, that's.
But because we don't teach people about that, people don't even know what happened.
No. The whole thing's like crazy. Best part, there's like just some of the best parts are just like At one point, the people in the neighborhood get so annoyed with the National Guard, they just join in and throw bricks at them.
Yeah.
It's like, we're
they said they were
sick
so
of you.
pissed because it was like a cloud of like tear gas around their neighborhood for days.
Right.
And they got so annoyed by the National Guard. They're like, yeah.
Right. And it's a real sign of class solidarity because I'm assuming they're living next to a factory. That's probably not a nice place.
It's definitely a working class neighborhood, probably, yeah.
But I also could see how you could really divide people by being like, oh, these strikers are really causing a problem in your neighborhood. Like, don't you just want to go home and sleep? But they stuck with them. There's other things, too, like, they're so cool about that. Like, the fact that there was, like, an unemployment league or, I don't know.
A socialist group organized them. They, like, paid them so they wouldn't go to work.
Hold on. You telling me the capitalists didn't organize the unemployed people?
They didn't. No, but I bring that up as frequently as I can because I want people to understand.
Oh, yeah.
Unions were founded on these principles, you know?
Yeah.
The things that you're afraid of, like they gave us the life we lived, you know?
Exactly. It cracks me up. It boggles my mind. You run into these people at work.
Mine too, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's just like, yeah, I'm just speechless. I've just dealt with it so many times. It's like, but you hit that brick wall and you try to like feel around it. Sometimes there was one guy I got so close with, and I could tell that I got close with him. He got real quiet about it, and then he just got loud and like, yeah, what about this, and it was some dumb social issue stuff like trans people in bathrooms, like the scariest thing that can happen in your life. Which is weird to me because like, how do you think you're gonna enforce that? Like, is everyone gonna have to pull down their pants when they go to the bathroom? Like, I've taken it off subject. But
now we delve into some things about how religion has so ingrained control of our government and like.
Yeah, right. But like, but yeah, like the Unemployed League came out and was like, "No, we're joining in." Like, no, we're with them because historically, obviously, unemployed people, if you're going to hire scabs, they're great people to go to because they're very desperate. So like when you can get the unemployed people on the side of the union, like, you win. That's the moral of the story. It's the moral of the story. You win unless you're one of the two guys get shot.
Yeah,
and,
that strike, by the way, like I'm fascinated by like Roosevelt sent like some of his top aides to Toledo to like settle that strike.
Right.
Like it was like that strike was such a huge ordeal in America that the president of the United States.
Well, I mean, of course it's not unprecedented, but like as obviously the earlier times the National Guard has killed strikers. It was later less connected society.
They killed strikers then too.
What?
National Guard and the Alawite strike.
Oh no, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying it's a big deal because like the federal government came in and killed people.
Yeah.
It was a big issue. So, but it wasn't unprecedented. But like it's probably the amount of people who found out about it is probably unprecedented.
Yes.
Like like all the mine massacres. Probably didn't it wasn't probably like front page news on in New York, right? Like, or if it was, it's like some little blurb or something. I might be wrong, but so I mean, he should be. He should send his top aides. Like when the army comes in and kills
American citizens.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, it kills any citizens, but
true.
But in this system,
but it's home. This is not. Yeah.
Right. Like, presumably, the whole point of the army is to protect the American citizen, and when it starts killing the American citizen, that's a big deal.
Yes. It's supposed to be. Yeah.
Right. Right. And not to be like, oh, if you're not an American citizen, No, it's always a big. But like even by their own, what I'm saying is by their own logic, this wasn't supposed to happen. You're not supposed to shoot your own citizens.
Which, by the way, brings me to a point that gets not talked about all the time. Is historically, law enforcement, police departments, have almost never been on the side of labor.
No, that's
matter of fact, they have murdered a lot of laborers.
right.
I mean, repeatedly. One of the projects I want to work on someday. I want to do a timeline of all of the incidents where American workers went on strike and were murdered by their own government.
Oh man, that's
because it happened over and over and over again throughout the history of America, and not just America, in the world too, but like especially in America.
No, especially in America, the labor movement in America is probably one of the bloodiest in the world.
It is, according to some studies I've read, that it is the bloodiest.
Right. I mean, there's a little debate
in industrialized countries.
Right.
Yes.
In the yes, that's the best way to put it, because like I mean, there's like slave revolts, and you can say that's a labor movement. And
correct.
Like,
correct.
And then
correct.
Those get real bloody real quick.
Yes.
But like in the era of where what we call the labor movement is the labor movement, I would contest that, because like maybe this has been a thing forever.
Yes.
You know what I mean? On some level, slave revolts are
since
the same.
Probably since man started working for other men.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, but yeah, no, it's extra bloody in the United States. It's just extra, like, not gonna. And I don't think, talking about a lot of like our workplace conservatives, if we talk about why that is, it's probably because Americans. One of the reasons would be America got very used to like just killing large groups of people that try to stand up for themselves, like Native Americans. Like it became you know what I mean. Like, but then we got to talk about how that maybe America's not the best and always good guy. And that's a real third rail with a lot of people. It seems like they can't imagine themselves being like, oh, we're the bad guys, and like, yeah, sometimes we're the bad guys.
Yeah,
a lot of times we're the bad guys, but like, I don't know. But I guess problem is it's a long conversation, because when you say, oh, we're the bad guys, well, if you really break it down, when we say we're the bad guys, that lets the people on top in the power get away with a lot of stuff, because then it's like, well, yeah, we're all the bad guys, right? And it's like, oh no, I'm just a poor factory worker. I don't have a lot of power in the system, but Mr. Moneybags here, who actually like buys politicians and stuff, you're the bad guy, but you control all of us. Mm-hmm. So that's why I get signed up into your. But like that comes super complicated, and it's hard to have a quick discussion about that. So it's very easy for somebody to get upset and like, oh, you're saying we're all the bad guys, Yeah. My family served in the military. I'm not gonna deal with this and walk away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because they think it's like a personal attack on their family members, and it's not. It's more like a systematic attack on why.
That's the thing that people miss. I don't know any group ever in my lifetime have come out and said, you know what, fuck veterans. Like, nobody has ever said that. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't.
No.
Like, no, like, rational people.
I mean,
you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not, nobody has ever protested our government to, like, be mad at veterans. Which is how people take it, though.
Not in the way they describe it. I mean, I think there's some, like, legitimate criticism of, like, this whole culture of, like, well, obviously, I went in the military and now I'm a better person than you. Like, that's right. And there have been people that criticize about that, and sometimes people get blasé and very, I'm not going to say But like those people have never been the people in power. Like this
Correct.
idea, right? That's what cracks me up. It's
Yeah.
like the people who are like really hypercritical of veterans never been the ones in power.
No, but it was like I know so
Like
many
they're
people.
some of the most marginal people. Like if you're like, if you're that like jaded on the left of like where you're gonna attack individual veterans, it's like it's because you're so fucking off, not out of power because you don't have any. And like I think even the people who are critical veteran, like this like I'm gonna call it a worship of veterans because it kind of is. Like some of it goes far, are also like, well, most of these veterans are there because they come from marginalized groups, and you know what I mean. Like part of it too is we don't talk about the whole thing of like a lot of people don't sign up for the military because they love the country. It's because like I need a job.
Speaking of which, that's one of the biggest things that people say why we can't have like free college education is because it would severely limit the military's ability to recruit.
I mean,
that's like one of the biggest perks allegedly of joining the military is you can go to college for free.
Right. Well, I think the military is too big, so
It is.
So it kind of.
I think so too.
Well, I'll play a fiddle for.
I guess I shouldn't say it is. I believe it is too, because I'm not like a historical military expert or nothing. But
I mean, it's.
I just read a lot of books.
I think you talk to the historical. I mean, even the people who like it are like, we have the biggest military, the most powerful military ever. And
economically, it's insane.
Right. But like, yeah, I'm not out to shit on veterans.
No, but
I do think that.
I brought that up because I've met seemingly so many people, but it's probably only been 15 or 20.
Right.
But I've met a numerous amount of people that are like, "Oh, fuck Colin Kaepernick. My grandpa was in the Army." Man, Colin Kaepernick's not mad at your grandpa, bro. You know he's not. Matter of fact, Colin Kaepernick would help your, whatever.
Right.
But that's what like they make it like that. You know what I mean?
And to be fair, a lot of the people I'm talking about who are critical of this like worship of veterans are veterans themselves because they're like, dude, it's not.
Yeah.
I'm not like this demigod.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I respect that. I mean, I respect the service they put in. I just, I don't. It's sad that we use all this service and effort people put in, and it's not being used in great ways.
Not at all. No.
I think it's great that they like it's very noble that they they're willing to put their lives out on for a cause. That even the people who do it because they think America's great, that's it's very noble that you signed up to defend this thing that is very virtuous and you're willing to put your life on the line. That's great. I just we need to talk about how you might have been misled about how virtuous this is.
Yes.
And like I want you to keep it, so I'll always respect it. It's just not.
Well, I always tell people I've got a lot of respect for people that did something I wasn't willing to do.
Right.
And that
Right.
I don't.
Yeah.
I could never make it through basic training. There's no possible way in hell that a crazy bastard like me could, let people scream at me like it wouldn't work. But there are people out there that were willing to endure that, and for whatever reason, and that, I appreciate that.
Yes. No. Yeah.
But just back to my point that, so I bought a Colin Kaepernick. My wife bought me a Colin Kaepernick jersey when all this started happening, and I don't know how we wound up talking about Colin Kaepernick. I don't know, Ben.
Oh, the veterans.
But yeah,
but
I'm just saying, like,
obviously he hates them. He obviously just wants.
Yes, but I'm
being
loyal.
sarcastic.
Yeah, I know. I'm a loyal Chicago Bears fan. I love football, but so loyal that that's all the merchandise I have that is NFL merchandise, is Chicago Bear merchandise.
Right.
I don't have anything else. But I asked my wife to buy me a Colin Kaepernick jersey. I've got a 49ers number 7, because my birthday's in September and everybody was burning jerseys.
Right.
And I'm like, you know what? Like, not that, I grew up in a very evangelical Christian Midwestern family, where you worship that flag almost. Like that's that's our country's flag. You stand up and take your hat off. Like you get goosebumps when the star's playing. That's how I grew up.
Right.
Not that that's bad, but as I got older, you start to see things and you realize America's not what they're selling you and blah blah blah. So when Colin Kaepernick took his stance, and
right.
Number one, I immediately realized how courageous that was. Because immediately it was,
I'll be honest. When it first started, I wasn't as aware of it, and I was just kind of like, I don't know. I'll be honest. I had this dumb attitude. I don't know why. Of course, I forget what year it was. I don't know if it was
2016 maybe, or
really. To be fair, I
14,
wasn't.
15,
I wasn't. I think
I
think I fell out of football in general, but like I had a little bit of that dumb attitude of like, just shut up and play. But like, I did immediately recognize the people shouting that were like, you're insane people. Like I'll put it this way. Even when I was a little negative to Colin Kaepernick, I was never passionately like thinking he hated America. It was just more like, it more came off as like, oh, this is a stunt. But if the way he stuck to it, the respect grew. It was like, first, maybe this is just kind of a dumb stunt, and then it became, well, no, this guy's for real. He's lost a lot of opportunities, a lot of money. He's put a lot of his life on the line.
Absolutely, yeah.
Not his. Be clear. After we just talked about it, he didn't put it. Well, I wonder if he's probably gotten death threats, but
I know he has. Yeah,
but not when I say a lot of his life, just a lot of the opportunity.
Well, he spent his whole life working towards a goal of being a quarterback in the NFL.
Right.
I mean, I don't know about his whole life, but like think about how hard he had to work.
Right.
Through high school, through college, get good grades, live the right life, whatever. Like very few people that do that get to the NFL and get to a Super Bowl.
Right.
And after he did that, he said, you know what? I believe so passionately in this one thing that I'm willing to give that up. Millions and millions of dollars, and like he's at the highest point of anybody that's ever played the position he's playing, And he was willing to sacrifice that,
right.
Which is something I'm not willing to do, and I don't make millions,
Right.
And it's, at least I haven't been, I should say. Not that I won't be. I just haven't found that,
Yeah, no, yeah.
But I don't think people that criticize him don't recognize, or they ignore the fact that this, like, he gave up that whole thing that he worked most of his life for because he believed in something so passionately. And that's kind of like what a hero should be in my book.
No, yeah, no.
But anyway, I made the point about buying that jersey because I wore it to the factory working, and some people were pretty upset about that. And I have repeatedly in my life been accused of a lot of things because I have been a little farther left than a lot of people I've been around. I get told all the time, oh, Dan, you don't want anybody to be rich. Dan, you don't want anybody to make money, which none of those things are true. So that it's, oh, Dan, you don't like the military. Oh, Dan, you don't like this. So I started every Friday for a while. I would donate $7 to different like veterans groups. So when people would like talk shit, I'd be like, oh yeah, well this is what I do. Last month I donated $28. What the fuck did you do? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I use that as like a whatever, but it is
I'll join you on your little like.
I have stopped doing that since I started giving money away everywhere else. But
no. But I'll say this, because obviously I was a little, critical of like the veteran issue. I probably own more Veterans Committee T-shirts from the union than
I've got a couple.
Most of the people who would probably want to shout in my face about what I said. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
That's kind of like
I definitely buy their shirts. Definitely, it's a raw deal when we're the ones, our union, who has not really any affiliation with the military in a direct sense, has to go lay wreaths on graves because, like, obviously, the government doesn't do that because America's so great.
No, but there's a that probably, I know it stems probably from like baby boomers and after World War II and
Right.
the union boom, like the factory boom, and
No, we should have a veterans.
Yeah, for
committee.
sure. Yeah,
I'm not trying to shit on.
no.
My point is just, I'm glad they lay wreaths on your grave. Those are like some of the most direct victims of like war and imperialism and
Yes.
right.
Yes.
Like even like the guys who benefit the most from imperialism aren't the ones who actually force it. Like that's part of the thing you get there with the cops too. Like that's a very, you were talking about cop unions or a really touchy issue of like, I have a lot of sympathy for cops, but at the same time, like
once again, they're doing a job I won't do.
Right, and also they're doing a lot of things that shouldn't be a job. I guess I should say. So like the job's tough, I get it, but like part of that reason why is because it's not doing, it isn't wholly good. So so that's it gets complicated. But you were talking about the jerseys and people giving you shit about it.
Mm-hmm.
I thought you were going
to. No. I just that his number was 7, so I donated $7.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, I was just talking shit.
That's the best. That's the best kind.
What do they call it? I was virtue signaling. Yeah. Whatever. I don't know.
That's the best kind of pettiness, though. That's a positive.
Well,
that's a positive pettiness right there.
That's
but that's good.
I've been known to donate money to.
And here's the thing too about being critical about our military actions, the military. Why is there such a need for these charities for veterans?
Because we don't take care.
Right. Because apparently it's
not that's funny. I'm not laughing about that. I'm just laughing about how insane it is that we don't.
Yeah, it's a dark. It's
at any level. 22 veterans a day commit suicide.
Right. So like, that's how important they think you are. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Right. So like, I mean, and that's another part of that whole veneration thing of like, it's a wood and metal. I heard this phrase. I think, I don't know if it was in a Union poem or song, but the wood and metal, meaning that like they won't even give you an actual gold medal.
Yeah.
It's painted. It's made of wood and it's painted gold. So it's like this fake reward.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's in an old version of Casey Jones, not the Grateful Dead version, but I never
which is
knew
a
this.
good version.
That's where I originally heard it, and then I was like, oh, Union songs, and then there's a song, Casey Jones Scab. I'm like, what? And then it's like a song about a guy who scabs and like does extra for the company, gets a wooden medal, and then crashes a train and dies. And
yeah.
And then it gets thrown. And then the song is like a little gleeful about it, and it's like, oh no, he goes to heaven, and then he starts scabbing on the angels, and then they organize and get him thrown in hell. So. So.
Sounds like my kind of.
Right.
Speaking of that, there's
which I assume is where the Grateful Dead one came from, because there's common themes there. Like Casey Jones is.
I'm sure they're all
running the train too hot and stuff.
Yep.
And I don't know, even maybe there was a song about an engineer, Casey Jones, that had nothing to do with unions, and then this happens a lot in union music, where like, oh, that's a popular song, we should put our spin on it and integrate the union because people know it.
Yeah.
So
that speaking of, I guess labor and working class art, Ohio Northern University is going to put. They're doing a play soon, and I can't fucking remember the name of it now. But it's based on a taxi cab strike in the 30s in New York City, and I hope people tune in. It's like on Zoom or something, and it's like $5 or $10 tickets or whatever, and all these like actors are somehow going to do this remotely on Zoom. It's not on Zoom. I don't know what it's on. It's virtual.
Okay.
But it sounds like it's really cool, and it's going to be really cool, and I hope.
It sounds like kind of like a table read, probably.
Ben, I don't know.
I mean, I guess you could.
I read the like press release event thing about it, but it's definitely actors, and they're doing like acting. I think.
Right.
Yeah, but they're acting.
Well, what a table read is when like before they do the actual shoot or even like a play, all the actors sit around, and they just
Like read through the script, kind of.
Right, but they still act.
Yeah.
Like they do all the.
And that might be. I don't know. I just one of my a friend of mine. I don't know what Brian does. He's like he builds stage stuff. Like he does, and he's a union guy, but he works with their theatrical program.
Yeah.
And so he like tuned me into it. I'm like, oh sweet, that's gonna be cool. That's coming up like next weekend, I think.
And for people who don't realize, this is just a Toledo fact. I didn't realize this until like the last Labor Day parade. There's that like stagehands and stuff union. There's one in Toledo. I didn't think about it.
I used to be in the stagehands union.
Really?
Yeah, Local 24.
Okay.
Briefly. Yeah, for about a year. I don't know, a little over a year.
Yeah.
Which is it's a hard union to get into. So when I say I was in the union, I never got my union card. But I got to work on shows. I paid union dues,
Right.
But like to get your union card, you got to work like so many hours in a year, and in this market, it's hard to do that. Right. But if you were in like L.A. where they have a lot of shows, or New York City, you could,
Right.
But that's a pretty wild union, man.
Yeah, I see their Facebook posts. I like them. They seem to be better than.
They it's very
not to be clear.
No.
I'm on Facebook. Every time a suggested union page comes up, join.
Yeah.
Join. So I'm talking about like all the locals combined they're posting. I don't know. I'm not trying to crap on the Toledo Local 24 Facebook postings and saying that they're not posting good stuff. I just be clear. Those locals in general seem to be posting good stuff.
Yes. There's some union locals around the country that I follow their pages and stuff, and I'm like, wow, these guys are on top of some,
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we should do more of that, though, because it's good to see. I don't want to go too deep into that. But sometimes we live a life in our own union, and we think, we're doing this, and we ignore that, hey, these people are being successful doing this.
Right.
And these people, not that we're not doing things right, or not that we're doing things poorly,
right,
but that doesn't mean that these guys can't have a different tactic that we should use.
Right.
That's probably the same across a lot of things in society and humanity, though.
Yeah.
Now that I think about that. But that's why I follow some of those other pages, though, just to kind of like, okay, yeah,
Right.
So.
And a lot of times, it's super interconnected because, like, talking about cool pages, people doing more stuff. I noticed, like, a lot of the, maybe at least one of the graduate student unions that the UAW represents was like in a big fight with the University of California.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest, I don't know exactly how that turned out, but it was cool that they were actually putting up a fight. Sounds like everyone got to keep their job, even though I think they went out like a wildcat.
They did.
And so most people got to keep their job still. So that's some kind of success. That shows you had at least some power of like they didn't totally can you. But obviously there's other people who support graduate student. There's other graduate student unions, and so interconnect. That's part of the problem too with like all these unions being kind of siloed. Is like, I mean, I would hope like at the international level. How often does the UAW talk to the steelworkers? Because obviously our sectors overlap, and we need to be working together. They call themselves international. I'm sure they probably email Unifor in Canada every once in a while. But like, how often do they talk to people down in Mexico?
Ooh, yeah.
How often do they talk to them? How often do they talk to like IG in Germany, or the unions in Korea? Those guys. I used to hate Kias, and now like they big. Hey. I'm not saying buy Kia because I
don't buy fucking Kias, damn it.
Don't. But I don't hate them as much as I used to. And to be fair, the people I'm talking about worked for GM Korea, so technically not Kia. But like they wanted to expand their temporary worker provisions in their contract. And what they did was first they stormed the press conference that GM was holding to the press. And then they tore up the whole CEO office. And then GM literally had to tell management, employees, don't show up to work today because like you might, it may be dangerous to show up. Please stay home. So they weren't going to put it down, and I got. I was, you know what? I'm going to point it out. The number of TPTs they were going to expand to was like, for 4 GM plants in 4. Let's be clear, 4. In Korea, it was, and I'm talking about South Korea, obviously. It was like 2,500 that they were going to throw.
Ouch.
Right, and Dan knows where I'm going with this. We have about, at least at one point we had half of that at Toledo. To be fair, that's technically like 2 plants.
We got more.
Now?
We got more than half.
Okay.
Of that number you quoted.
Yeah.
And so I was talking to.
So when I saw that, I was like, oh man, I salute to them. Like, they were going to put up that, and they did all that fight while GM was filing bankruptcy in Korea. So like, none of this like, oh, we got to sacrifice for the company to keep it alive. They're like, nah, like. On some level, I think their attitude was like, well, you might not be around tomorrow, so I want my stuff now.
I try to, so when I see things, I guess, that are not working, I want to say broken, but let's soften it. Let's say not working.
Right.
When I see things that aren't working.
Or stalling.
Right.
Like
or stale.
Right.
Or, it's like.
Aren't working as well, because some of it does work. It just works so slow. It's like. But
I get frustrated, and I get mad, and then I'll eventually at some point I'll stop and I'll say, okay, what do we do to make this better? You know what I mean? And it's like, fuck, I forgot why I was saying that too, man.
Yeah.
I need to make things better. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
speaking of stalling.
I don't know, but something you said, we were talking about, like bosses being afraid and storming the CEO's office and stuff. One of the things that the media, mainstream media, doesn't talk about enough is that those pissed off Amazon workers had that fake guillotine outside Jeff Bezos' house and shit. Great. That's the kind of shit I want to see on MSNBC at night. You know what I mean? And it's like, well, as a pretty. I don't even know how to say this. I love Buddhist principles, Ben. Like, I'm a peace-loving human. I don't want to harm living things, right?
Right.
But, so I don't want Jeff Bezos to, like, die.
No.
But the fact that they want to remind him that, hey, you need to, like, take care of your people, because the alternative to that is, we'll remind you that the people have power,
Right.
Like, we should do more of that in America.
Yeah.
I remember what I was going to tell you now. I think, looking back at UAW history and union history, one of the worst things that the union did was become where, and I think this happened during bankruptcies and hard times, where, like, we need to, like, work with the company.
It happened before that.
And so now it's like,
but
everything is co-signed and all that. We do, absolutely. I tell people all the time, we have to build quality products, and a lot of them, because I have a family to feed and I have kids I want to put in college. Like, that's uber important. That's utmost important. But I'm not licking no goddamn boots to do it.
Yeah. I got a couple points there. I think it happened before that, but it definitely accelerated.
Yes.
The brick got thrown on that. Most of that started, let's talk about we can talk about Taft-Hartley when they kicked a lot of the socialists out. That's when it happened, because a lot of the that was where a lot of the fire in the belly was.
Mm-hmm.
And to be fair, it happened at different times, different unions, because like UAW, I think, from what I understand, obviously not all of them, and this gets contentious, they kicked a lot of the socialists out, and a lot of them came back in. Like, oh, I'm not a socialist anymore.
Yeah.
Like, and we all had this, like, kind of, like, understanding.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like Walter Reuther literally campaigned for a socialist candidate before he was union president in the UAW, presidential candidate against Roosevelt way back.
Mm-hmm.
So, And obviously, I feel like he got obviously some of that got soft over time.
Sure,
but some of that's also like this. You have to work within the system you're in.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it he got soft. So that's where I think it really started because that's where the real harsh because obviously the socialists are always going to have this attitude of like, yeah, no, fuck management, like we can't trust them. Their interests are literally directly opposed to ours.
Mm-hmm.
So this whole we're all on the same team. No, we're not.
No, we can't. We
No,
can't.
no.
No, we can't.
And it's not like everyone who wasn't socialist had the opposite view. It's just you take they took a lot of the part of it too is just literally they took a lot of the talent out of like these guys were organizers. Even if they flipped their ideology the next day, they would still have all the skills needed to pursue that ideology. So that's and when you don't have a lot of skills, the opposing company, you just kind of you gotta work with them.
Yeah.
I forget the second part. What I was going with. Bezos and the guillotine. Yeah, no one. Here's the thing. I think I'm sure this is there's obviously occasions it's wrong, but generally, the people march to the guillotine. Aren't it's not necessarily people want to kill him. It's those people shout, well, I ain't giving up anything, so you got to kill me. So this whole thing, you just want out for blood. It's like, no, there's just people who literally will like a dragon on top of gold will shout, no, never. And that takes me back to something you said. Oh, you don't want anyone to be rich, or you said people accuse you of that.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody were to say that to me, I would say, depending on their attitude, the quick answer is like, no, that's not really. But on some level, sure. But why do people want to be rich?
Power.
Well, right. And why do you want power? And the reason is you feel insecure, right? Mm-hmm. That's why you need money. Because I need enough money in case I get sick. I need
security.
Right. So what I'm saying is if you live in a world where you don't have to be rich to get that, then no one needs to be rich.
Oh, that's a novel concept, Ben.
Right? And so like it's not that like
that was sarcasm.
Right. But that's my point. It's just like it's like, like the point is not to hurt rich people. It's like, what's this? Live in a world where no one has to be rich to.
It creates imbalances, and nobody. So I tell people this, like I know that I can. There's words for this, but. Like it's late at night. To be clear, Ben and I work different shifts, and I've been up since about 4:10 this morning, which is 18 hours ago. I don't know. Anyway, I like to make like really big statements, like bold statements to people to like get attention. I know this about me, right? Like, I go over the top. How about that? So, but this is a true fact. Jeff Bezos, one man, has more power in America than the entire UAW combined. Like, I can argue true facts to back that statement. That he consistently has every city in America begging to build him free factories. And they don't charge him taxes. And they give him helicopter pads on, like, whatever. And naturally endangered, like, species habitats on the beach probably. Who fucking knows? But, like, whole cities are lining up all day long, groveling at his feet, offering to give him anything he wants to give jobs in their city. And they're not doing that to the UAW.
No.
And when you have that kind of imbalance,
right.
like that's when people are going to start bringing guillotines in front of your house.
Right.
That's and the reason why they bring, to be clear, why they're this, not that Ben needs to know this, Ben knows this. The reason why they're doing that is because if this imbalance gets larger, that's going to fucking happen. Every single time in history, throughout the entire history of this planet.
Well, it's kind of like with the Bernie thing where they accuse him of being like this like Leninist guy. And I say that I'm not completely knocking all Leninists, but just like they're like he's like the worst of the Bolsheviks. He's the most power hungry, and it's like, no, literally he's probably also concerned about that. So he's giving you an exit plan.
Yeah.
He's literally saying, hey, let's all just cool down and take this opposite route because this is where it's going to go.
This is what's and
talk about putting context of like the Russian Revolution. A lot of blood, a lot of awfulness. Remember, the Russian people didn't. This is something they don't teach you like in American schools. I never got taught this. They, at the beginning of the war of World War I, a very pointless, dumb war. They had or like maybe it didn't happen during the war, but at one point they had something called a Duma, which is like a parliament or a House of Representatives. They technically didn't even have power, but like they could basically they would vote on decrees and basically tell the czar, the king, oh, this is what you do. This is what we want. And it was at least a voice. You know, if you want to talk about like American, it's the right to petition your government, right? One of the important things that led to the American Revolution is because they weren't allowed to do that. During this war, where like starvation increased, literally people were sending a whole generation of men to go die in like this weird, pointless war. They took that away, and when people got upset about that, they kept cracking down on that and that and that, and it got worse and worse and worse. And then eventually, people were just like, this literally the soldiers, the veterans. This is like the flip side of the Free Corps. Awful. They came back and were all nasty, willing to kill communists. These guys are like, you know what? This is done. This is over. We're they're telling us to march this way. We're gonna go back because we don't like them anymore. They're like, this is our stuff. Got to end. Yeah. Got to stop now. And that's how the Russian Revolution started.
Yeah.
So as things get worse and worse and worse, and the fact that there was no parliament, all that. What I'm saying is, because the powers that be in Russia got things go that far and that bad. That's part of the reason why the Communist Party in Russia was so brutal, because like it was, you have to swing back and you're fighting stuff. So if you're worried about like this weird, violent communist revolution that goes really bloody and stuff
right now,
yeah. Well, right. My point is like maybe be open to these socialist ideas, and we can work together for a future in a cooperative manner that doesn't, because eventually something awful is going to happen.
Yes.
And what's even scarier is it might not be the communists, it might be the fascists, and that's even.
To be clear, you made a statement, and it was so I wanted to repeat it,
right.
Ben, because I felt like it was important. You said that they don't teach you this in American schools, and I just want to point out. There's a lot of shit they don't teach in American schools.
Right, including in the Russian Revolution. What people don't realize, America, when we talk about the Cold War, we started it. Because, so the people of Russia, it was very popular, the original revolution. And to be clear, even Lenin was in Switzerland at the time in exile. Literally, the Kaiser, Russia's enemy, or at least of the Tsar, literally paid for his, while the revolution is happening. It's like, well, we got to keep that going. So Lenin, we got a free train ticket. If you want to go back to Russia, we'll pay for you. We'll make sure, even though you're a Russian citizen, we're at war with Russia. We'll make sure you get that train back to St. Petersburg or Moscow. I forget which one. I know he landed, the station he came into town on was Finland Station, which is like, it's like a meme in left-wing culture. But during that, America, who was allied with the Tsarist government, was upset because the Russian people, there's one big demand: war is over. And that was such a big demand that even as we look at it as Western, these bloodthirsty, evil communists who just wanted their own means, one of those things was world revolution. So there was some of the communists who were like, well, we're pausing the war now, but once we get in power, we got to start because we got to free all the working people. So we got to start marching back out. And then the other communists are like, no, you're not reading the room here. The war is over. We got to just have peace for a while because people are not having it. That's the only reason we're here looking at power right now, is this war got to end. So that in that situation, America was upset that the Russian people decided, the people, again, we're out of the war, and we get so upset that our ally pulls out that we're like, well, we gave you a bunch of guns earlier, right? And so we want them back. And the Russian people were like, no, you gave it to us, and they're ours now. I'm sorry. We're not, we're fighting a civil war right now, so we kind of need those. Because the Tsarists didn't just, they got knocked out. They ran to the frontiers of the Russian Empire and kept fighting. But so America sent U.S. troops to like I think it's called Archangel is the station or the city where there's a big depot just to repossess guns. Now imagine, there's so many levels to that. Imagine being a soldier being sent into a middle of a popular revolution to like repo guns. It's like, and then dying for that. And it was like, yeah, that doesn't sound like a great use of American troops. But my point is, we literally went in there and started attacking this popular communist government at the time. I mean, you can say later, oh, they became oppressive, but at the time, they were very popular. And just to repo these guns, we just invaded a country, supposedly our ally. We like the whole idea of why we gave them the guns is because they were allies, but now they're not. So we got to take
that's a common theme in American history,
right?
Also.
So like it's just, that's something they don't tell you. Like, oh, maybe we kind of started the Cold War.
Yeah,
it wasn't just Stalin being mean.
You want to hear one Cold War story that I have?
Yeah. So
I'm a little older than you, Ben, but I remember in the early '80s, I was really young then, but I remember in the small town I grew up in Illinois, one of our senators came to town for like a town hall, right? And I had to be, this is in the Reagan years, so I was less than 10 probably. And I remember this senator named Paul Simon, not the singer-songwriter, but Paul Simon came to town for this town hall. And Paul Simon, he seemed like he was ancient to me. I was like little. But he always wore bow ties. And anyway, my dad and my uncle took me to this town hall meeting. My dad listened to Rush Limbaugh later in life, religiously every day. Like, I grew up in that environment, whatever. So my dad and my uncle, I grew up very politically aware my whole life. Just different spectrums. Yeah. But so my dad and my uncle take me here, right? And I'm little. I remember my uncle getting up, raising his hand, and he gets up and he gets called on this town meeting for the senator. I'll never forget sitting there and just not really understanding what the fuck he was saying. All I remember my uncle saying was basically what are you doing about the Russians? I'm sure it was probably more involved than that. But look, that's what I remember. It seemed like that. It seemed like a real hillbilly redneck. Hey, the Russians, but I remember being little, we were scared of the Russians.
Right.
And that's, early 80s, Reagan years. But it was I mean, probably like tail end of the Cold War, I guess, like towards the waning years anyway.
I mean,
but it was like I remember that, like, and looking back, like, it's a different world now, but
yeah. And I like, I don't know if Mike caught it, but I was kind of snickering a little bit about that. But at the same time, I mean, I'm sure in Russia there's some guy sitting at some like local Soviet meeting, like, what are you doing about the Americans?
Oh yeah,
so, right.
But that leads me.
Well, that's what happens when you point nukes at each other. Like,
yes.
to be fair, like as much as like, like I understand like I wasn't alive during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and I find a lot of the anti Fidel stuff very weird. Like the amount of like Americans really hate Fidel Castro, but when I was there, if I was alive then, and like this guy was like pointing a nuke at me, I was like, well, okay, yeah, like it's real scary. And that Fidel is not a great, like, not everything the Cuban Revolution did was great.
Just to point out, just for the sake of the podcast, the Cuban Revolution is very personal in my home because I'm married to a Cuban.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
Yeah.
What's the? I would like to know more about that. Like, not to hear on the
when we turn this off, you're gonna be you're gonna be blown away, Ben.
Okay, because
there's some history that we'll talk. Some real cool stuff. But anyway,
and I would be clear. I understand why like a lot of the people, the Cuban Americans in Florida, aren't happy with Fidel either.
Oh yeah,
you're right. But it cracks me up like it was like some guy in the middle of like North Dakota is really upset about Fidel.
Yes, right. Always, and he
you know what I mean. Like, but if I was alive then and like he literally pointed nukes, and there's like literally, I don't know the missile technology there, but like at one point there was nukes in North Dakota, so like that's part of what you use nukes to blow up his other nukes.
Yeah.
So I'm not. Yeah. Like
that. So I have a son. My son's 16, and he loves like history and stuff, and we talk about things. One of the things we were talking about Cuba,
right?
And growing up in America, you're always taught communism's bad, Cuba's bad. We can't like Cuba. So my son and I try to be open and honest, whatever. And we were talking, and I'm like, there's good and bad to the Cuban government.
Right.
The good, their healthcare system's better.
Yeah.
Their education system's better.
Right.
If your refrigerator breaks, you will eventually get another refrigerator. Like there's some good things, but there's also some very bad things.
Yeah.
But then if you like compare that to what's really true about America, like there's some good,
right?
But there's a lot of not so good, and that's like the same everywhere, really.
Right.
At some level, probably.
Yeah.
Except for maybe Saddam Hussein. Maybe.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to
No. I'm just saying.
Like say Fidel.
No. But
greatest guy. Not.
I'm not going to mention anything about where we work, but I will say, when Fidel Castro died, his funeral party stalled because his casket was being driven by a Russian Jeep.
Oh, okay.
Not an American.
Okay.
Had it been an American one, it would have been most likely a lot newer and more reliable.
I mean, they have a lot of American vehicles there. They're just all from the 50s.
They are. There's a Rolling Stone documentary about when they toured through the Hispanic countries, and there's a pretty cool segment in there about Cuba. They take some they recycle old like car parts and stuff that are like beyond repair.
Yeah.
And they make guitar string out of them.
Wow.
Like this boggles my mind. Yeah. Out of all the cool technology I've watched documentaries about, the fact that they do that like blows my mind. So, but anyway, we've been talking for a while, Ben.
Yeah.
I feel like we should probably wrap it up at some point.
Sure.
But I want you to be comfortable and make sure you got out everything you want to talk about. I'm hoping you'll join me again. I'm hoping.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been good having you, man.
It's been fun.
All right.
I don't know how to wrap this up.
So I don't either, man. Ben, I really don't know what the fuck I'm doing.
I listen to so many podcasts.
I just like talking to people. Yeah, me too. But I just like talking to people and screw it. Hey, thanks for joining us on the Blue Collar Gospel Hour. Thanks, Ben.
All right. Thank you.